The first Data Futurology event for next year is going to be Ops World, data-centric operations for business value. We're going to be hosting the community in person at the Sofitel Wentworth in Sydney on March 14th and 15th. We're going to be discussing operationalizing securely for business value, impact, and scale. What are we operationalizing? Everything across the data analytics and AI space. We're bringing all the ops perspectives together into this one event. So it's going to be data ops, operationalizing data pipelines, analytics ops, operationalizing our analytics, ML ops, and AI ops, about operationalizing machine learning and artificial intelligence in our businesses. We're going to be discussing processes, frameworks, the observability, and the future of this space. Check out the website for more and hope to see you there.
I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading specialist data recruitment business. With offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they're experts at providing recruitment strategy and building data teams for clients across industries Australia-wide. They provide recruitment solutions for all roles across the data lifecycle, including data engineering, data science, advanced analytics, customer and marketing insights, business intelligence, data product managers, and data governance. They're skilled at finding the best permanent and contract hires for your business needs, as well as statement of work, project focus, data resources. At Talent Insights, relationships matter most. I can say from first-hand experience, Talent Insights are fantastic to work with. Whether you're a business leader within an HR network or a specialist data candidate, Talent Insights should be the first company you turn to for all your data recruitment needs. Find them at talentinsights.com.au.
Hi, and welcome to Data Futurology. This is Felipe Flores. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really great episode ahead. We're going to be talking about data transformations. We're going to be talking about the human side and then how to help the organization adopt the products and the services that are coming out of data analytics and ML and AI projects and transformations. For that, we have an excellent guest, Tamara Mirkovic. Tamara, welcome to the show. How are you going today?
I'm great. Thank you, Felipe. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for making the time. So first of all, I wanted to ask you if you can tell us about your role and your remit at the moment, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, fantastic. So at the moment, I'm the program manager for a new data and information insights program at the University of New England. So they're based in New South Wales in Armidale in Australia, which is a small rural town. It's a really exciting project because we're trying to uplift the entire capability of the university to enable them to attract more students and be more agile in this new online learning environment. And adapt to all the changes to tertiary education since COVID. And so it's a significant investment that the university is putting in, and I'm establishing the program from the ground up. So it's a really good time to be involved. Yeah, lots happening on the visualization side and the building a new platform as well using the cloud tech. So that's always exciting as well.
Wow. So completely, from the ground up. That's really exciting. And what was the state of the project when you came in? Was it a blank sheet? Were some things in motion?
Oh, there was a visionary business case, but as we know, a lot of the visionary, of goals aren't always practical or implementable immediately. So we've really had to take a step back and say, well, what's our current capability, and look at, even just baseline data literacy levels amongst the university staff, and then plan a way forward to mature things. You obviously can't do a big bang implementation. That very rarely works. So we're just going to take it step by step and, slowly, incrementally build up maturity and capability where it makes sense, and focus on the high value areas like better insights about teaching and learning so that the university can improve how it delivers its courses and, attract and retain students and that sort of thing.
That's great. And in doing such a huge transformation project, how do you chunk it down? What are some of the main components that get attention first, and the sort of main components that will get attention later? What does that landscape look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it can be really overwhelming, particularly when you first join a new, organization, that you often get hit with numerous stories of pain points. This is broken, this is siloed, no one knows what's going on. So there's a lot of, I guess, an avalanche of difficulties around data, and that happens in a lot of places, not just in UNE, but there are challenges all over the institution, and it's the first step is to understand where the biggest pain points are that are common across all the stakeholder groups, so that then you can focus your energy on fixing the common problems and not so much focusing on the outlier scenarios that, although might be quite pressing at the time, they can often, I guess, sway the focus and the investment into a very niche area. So we're very conscious about using our funds in the best possible way to give the most benefit and value. So a lot of that comes down to very good requirements gathering, really understanding the business well and not making assumptions up front. So I've spent the last few months really trying to understand how the university functions and where could we make the best improvements with how we use data. And so I think it's like a big puzzle that you just piece together and then work on the 80% rule of, if 80% of the stakeholders would benefit from this upgrade, then let's focus on that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And what are some of the main challenges that, in your experience, that people will come across in doing a digital transformation and a data transformation in organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to maybe not so much on my current program of work, but previously I've worked in the Department of Environment and Science, and we did a really big transformational program there that spanned about 5 or 6 years. And there were some really key challenges there around, that we had a lot of experts in using data in terms of scientists being very data savvy. They're great at collecting, cataloging, tracking data all the way through the life cycle. But where they were struggling was use of new tools and technologies, because they're just so embedded in the way things have always been done and very hands-on with the process. And so a lot of the challenges were even just trust in using new tools, in transforming a process that has worked for 10 to 20 years, and entrusting a new project team to, I guess, remodel and reshape how they do their work. It's quite daunting. So we had a lot of human challenges around that, and there's always that fear of, I guess, the unknown, but also about, well, can I trust that the automation that our new data tools will provide will do the same job as a human, like that QAs the data at every step and cleans it and makes nuanced, I guess, nuanced kind of cleansing of the data. So it's difficult to say, well, the machine will do that perfectly every time. And so there were those sorts of struggles. There's also that open data policy. So we very much implemented the FAIR principles. So, that making sure that whatever scientists are building could be reused by other groups, that they weren't just looking in their own silo all the time, and that it was always, repeatable and had, really solid foundations of being integrated, interoperable, and having lineage, version control, all these like core concepts that we needed to prove before the scientists would trust us with their data. So it was quite a lot of trust building, I would say, activity before we even got into the technical landscape.
Yeah, exactly. Huge hurdle. And it's so common in digital transformations and in organizations where there's new capabilities or updated, I guess, technical capabilities, that then we have to also get the workforce to be excited about engaging with that technology. In my case, I work in healthcare in a health tech company, and we have people that are ex-clinicians, like medical doctors and physios and nurses and things like that, that have done data science training or IT, and they've become analysts and software engineers. And having the knowledge of the domain knowledge and the technical knowledge in the same brain is hugely beneficial. But what I've noticed, similar to what you're saying, is that they're great at working independently and solving really hard problems with that combined domain knowledge and technical skill. And they get answers really quickly, but they're not repeatable. They don't have lineage. They're not adopting the platforms, the cloud platforms that we have in a way that it can be, that the code can be shared, that it can be collaborated on. And we've definitely had to work on getting them comfortable with following that approach and sharing, essentially, and being able to have other people build upon their work or them building upon other people's work. How have you gone in winning that trust and changing that mindset for people to become to all come into the same ecosystem of tools and approaches?
Yeah, that was a really interesting journey. So I did learn from a few failed attempts, actually, which might be worth covering. My first attempt to embed the change was really just to showcase how amazing the tools were. And that approach fell really flat. So we picked a group in science that worked on, I think it was hydrology or water-related science. And so we really did a hard sell of, here's the architecture, the before and the future state process map, and look at the amazing savings you'll get in human manual effort that will be reduced, so you can do better science, less data wrangling. That was our sales pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a real surprise how that landed with the business. And they were not very keen to sign up, even after all the glossy, showcasing, and we had all our architects present. And so we had the best and brightest of our team, selling the vision of how amazing this new platform will be. But what we couldn't really understand was what was going on in their minds and as they were listening to the pitch. And a lot of the concerns were not vocalized initially. So we got some buy-in, a little bit of buy-in, and we thought, great, everyone's on board, and we just started rolling. But it became apparent that not everyone was supportive of the change, and it took a long time for us to unpack, well, why is there resistance? People are not showing up to workshops. They're not coming to the showcases. So suddenly it was just this sort of disconnect happened in the project. And you can't have a project where the business is not leading as well. Mm-hmm. So trying to lead with the tech just didn't work out at all. And the more we tried to sell it, I think the less the trust was. And I think it felt like, well, you're pushing this new platform on us, and we don't know if it's in our best interest. What about our job safety? I don't know if I can trust the outputs of your modeling. And, there were a lot of concerns raised, and a lot of them were legitimate, but things we just hadn't considered up front. So that was an interesting learning experience. We had a highly resistant group to start with. It just, essentially the project stopped. It just completely stopped dead, where we could not get it over the line no matter what we did. So we decided to just pause it, and we engaged with another group in science that was very willing and actually quite keen to explore. So their mindset was a bit different. They had maybe a higher literacy level in the new tool set anyway, and some of them were, I guess you could say, more on the leading edge tech adoption side of the curve. So I think you've got to find the right stakeholder that can be your champion. Mm-hmm. So we found some scientists that were like the champions that wanted to do more than what they were doing. So they signed up willingly, and we said, okay, we'll work with you, even though we weren't sure if their use case was as impressive as the other group, because we'd modeled it and said, well, there's a huge benefit here. But then we thought, look, let's try and do a small win with this other group that was very willing and engaged. And what we realized was once we had a good news story to share across the other science groups, and we said, here's an example of what we've done. It was a small scale, but it showed what was possible. And it wasn't just theory or architecture or conceptual diagrams. It was a real life scientific process that we had re-engineered to be far more efficient and give, results at the push of a button on a mobile device. You can work from anywhere. And it really impressed a lot of the more resistant groups, and who then became more willing to talk to us after that. So I think lead with success, showcase what's possible in a real life context. I think that's really important, no matter what the business is. So if your business is, I don't know, accounting or finance, you would have to, first of all, I think, do a proof of concept or a pilot and showcase what's possible in the context of the business to get the buy-in and say, oh, I understand what this means now. It's not just hypothetical, wishy-washy tech talk. And I think that gained a lot of trust. And as it turned out, the resistant group did come back the following year, and they were more willing to say, okay, we're ready to engage now. So that was a good win.
That's a huge win. Yeah, that's a huge win across the board. So interesting. I love the focus on the users, like on the how you're zeroing in on the people that had to make the change and had to come to the new world, and in getting them so engaged on the new process. That's really good. And tell me, what was the leadership support like before, or I guess leading up to the engagement with the users, and then during the initial resistance from the first group, and then going on to the second group? How was the leadership engagement and support during that time?
Yeah, from the top down, we've had support for that program from the deputy, from basically the Director General down. Yeah. So it had so much support from all the leadership team. But what we found is top-down direction still doesn't fix the resistance in the actual team using the technology. And the more we tried the top-down messaging, the more it felt like they were being forced into a corner of, you just have to do this work. I think it was far better. Well, I think it's good to do both. So you need strong leadership on the top, but you also need a way to influence at the user level. And I think the way to influence is through peers. So peers that they respect and have a similar role or job to them. I think that you get more traction through the peer network. At least we did in that context than we did from a lot of top-down messaging, like, the DG wants this, the minister wants this, all of Queensland wants this project to succeed. There's a lot of pressure. Now you need to just follow our lead and do X, Y, Z. And I think especially with very intelligent, PhD people that we're dealing with here, they don't respond well to just being told. They need to come to the conclusion themselves that this is the best way forward, and they need to see evidence. They need to see that you know what you're doing, that you've demonstrated success, and then they're willing to engage with you from there. But we certainly did try a lot of the strong leadership from the top. It just in some instances isn't enough to carry it all the way through. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good lesson to share as well. And then how did you go moving, or I guess how did you go finding the second group? And because I love the approach of searching for the coalition of the willing and trying to identify people that are are more ready for the game, for the change, ready for something different, and that want to be engaged. But how did you go about finding that group?
Yeah, we found that it was through conversations. And so we'd done a lot of, again, requirements gathering across the entire cohort of scientists. And we found that there were some that were just very interested from the outset. As soon as we spoke with them about, well, what do you want to do with data in general? What are your pain points? And some of them immediately said, look, anything you can do to help me, I'm happy to be part of that. So I think people volunteered along the way, and the more we explained what we were doing and promoted our project internally, the more we had people just approaching us to say, is there an opportunity? I'm interested in the new technologies. We chose the Azure stack, and some of them were very keen to engage with that and say, well, I want to learn more about what that tool set can give me, and I want to explore the machine learning advanced analytics side, and how do I sign up? So those people just sort of emerged, and because they tend to be the ones that are more keen to take risk and explore and adopt. And so the early adopter crowd, I think just communicating and being open with the broad audience, we found that those people naturally just popped up on our radar. And I think once we engaged with them and they became almost like our core group of users or our champions in effect, they were then able to go back and share what they'd learned with their peer groups in community practices or other meetings that they had. And it just spread the word organically. Although we had like structured comms campaigns, I think the best way we got the message out was just through the peer network.
Amazing. That's so good. And that's something that often analytics teams don't do enough of, like of the engagement, the communication, hearing and understanding people's reservations, and then kind of working through them. That sometimes, and I see it in myself, that sometimes we want kind of to lead with our work and to think that, if the work's good enough, then people are going to flock to it. But they won't if you don't focus and deliver on the human side, which is what you've done so well. I wanted to ask you, what have been some of the main fears or concerns that people have had during the process, and how have you appeased them?
Yeah, definitely. I think this will resonate with anyone that works with data, but we heard a lot of concern upfront about like security. So obviously cybersecurity is very topical right now, but in general, security came up repeatedly. And, around scientific data, you might have some data sets that are sort of highly secure. In our case, we had a threatened species register that tracks all the endangered species of plants and wildlife and where they're located, which can be used for, poaching, and people can sell those things on the black market. So it was really important that we protect some of that data. And the way that we traditionally had our security set up, it was very perimeter based. So there wasn't a lot of, segregation within. There was some, but it wasn't very sophisticated. So there was concern about our theme of open data. And that was a big part of our program, was trying to open up and share data. So we had an open data policy or principle to begin with. And obviously there's exceptions to that. So once we'd addressed that and said, well, we will be 99% open, except for these few use cases which have a proper rationale, and we will secure them in, and ensure that those things are protected. But for the most part, the scientific data should be open and shareable so other scientists can use it, and we all gain better insights by sharing. So that was the first hurdle. And there's also, fear. Whoever's collected the data worries about who's going to use my data for some purpose that I'm not aware of. And I don't know if they will take my collection and change the context of it or change the data set itself. And so there were fears about how will the data be used once I open up my data to essentially the whole world. So, and there's research grants that come with certain research. So we had to allay those fears as though if your data is confidential in that you're publishing a paper, that's fine. We'll put that in a separate category as well. But again, for the most part, everything that we collect should be open and available for use. So I think that first hurdle was difficult. And then after that came questions about the manual data processing load being removed or reduced by using automation and using the cloud platform that does that transformation, and it does the anomaly detection and a lot of things that were done by humans, especially in the plan and collect phase of the data lifecycle, in collating all the data. There was so much effort in manually doing that and retyping data between different systems and, from paper-based, field capture and also real-time sensors. We had so much data, but inefficient ways of using it. So then there came the trust question of, well, how do I trust that whatever goes into the platform and comes out again is trusted? And so then you have to go through quality assurance and talking about lineage and version control and all those sorts of things to make sure that there is a sense that these things are being tracked and captured and they are repeatable, and you can see where the insight came from. You can trace it all the way back to the raw data. So that ended up building trust. And then we had to explain that people's jobs were not on the line. Part of this was not to downsize at all. It was to do better science more effectively, use the incredible knowledge that people have, take them away from the data wrangling where they were spending hours and hours of their day cleaning up in Excel, like data sets. They would spend weeks and weeks on it at various points of their collection cycle. And by saying, well, that will be removed, it's not that your job's not needed, but now you can spend that time on the analysis, which is the high value that you bring as a scientific specialist. So when people heard that, I think then they started to get more excited about it and less worried about, well, if no one's doing this data processing, then why am I here? And so you have to reframe people's jobs to be, I guess, give them a sense of what it will look like in the new world after the transformation. And we did that through what we call storytelling or day in the life of a scientist, where we described what that would be like from 8 a.m. all the way to like your end of day. What would it look like? And that really help people understand the change of, okay, so my 4 hours of Excel, cleaning every day would be replaced with, I get to just review all the data that comes in on a nice clean dashboard. I can then explore any anomalies myself and I can trace that and then have a look at what modeling I want to do and work with our data science team on creating new models. And that became exciting for people, saying, oh, so I'm still needed, I'm still valuable, but actually I'm doing higher value work and less of the, I would call it lower level wrangling tasks.
Yeah, that's excellent. I can see people both being fearful at the beginning, but then getting excited by the promise and what the new world would look like. So I love that approach, and that would have definitely got people engaged and excited and involved. That's great. And then once you had the first team of people that engaged and then they started to work in the new world, in the new platform, new approaches. What did it look like to scale that across the rest of the organization?
Yeah, scaling is the challenge. I don't think we've quite cracked that yet. I still keep in touch with my team over there in science and environment, and they still are struggling with scaling. I think it's fair enough to do it on 2 or 3 use cases, but once you're getting into even more complexity and bringing more people on board, it's difficult if you've got a small team. So I think their approach would be to prioritize all the use cases that are out there and work with each group, sort of 1 or 2 at a time in small enough groups that you can manage. And as the transformations happen, we will have repeatable patterns that we'll be able to say, look, your use case fits this data pattern. It might not be identical, but say you use real-time sensors and you have a time series data model. So look, we've got a similar one, and it will make savings in that we're not starting from scratch because we have patterns already available in our platform that we could then reuse and just adjust slightly to meet the stakeholder requirements. So that's the intention with the scaling, is once you get enough, I guess, critical mass of use cases, then everything should be fairly much just a version of what's already been done. So that's our intention with scaling, is create enough patterns to then be able to just reuse and very quickly onboard all the other use cases.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And I can see that the human side will need sort of continual work every time to engage and win over those people and get them into the new world. But that from a tech delivery side, there can be a lot more reusability over time. That sounds really great. And were there any particular use cases or applications that you were very excited about, or ones that really I don't know, won you over? Any ones that you particularly enjoyed?
Yeah, there's probably one I always think about is our digitization of the herbarium specimens. So Queensland has a really large repository. I think it's 800,000 specimens that have been collected since the first fleet came and explored Australia. So we have specimens dating back, hundreds of years that have been preserved and kept in this one building. And they're essentially so valuable, you couldn't even, they're irreplaceable, basically, specimens. So the difficulty we were having is that all around the world, people want to research and they want access to those specimens. So one of the things we did was we used high resolution imagery to digitize and take very, very fine images of all of these high value specimens. And we've done 200,000 of the 800,000 collection so far, and they're all the oldest and most precious specimens are now fully digital. So you can zoom in on the tiny fibers and the small little veins on the leaves, and you can almost, in effect, feel like you've got the specimen in your hand. So that was amazing. And it unlocked other opportunities around machine learning, which we hadn't really considered, in that, once we had a certain number of images about a certain species of plant, that we could then train a machine to automatically identify that species. And we realized that this could be used for research. And so we opened it up to Griffith University, and they had a PhD student that took our data set, our digital images, and built a model to help predict where a legume disease was spreading through the environment. And they could see what was a native species and what was this sort of weed pest species just by using the machine data and the satellite imagery. So then we had the same thing with banana crops having disease spread, and we could map where the disease was likely to spread to just using the satellite data. That the machine model became so good at picking a banana plant out of all other types of plants that we were then able to really identify and stop the spread of disease in plants. So you could see how that use case can now be expanded to almost any other type of plant now that we have this capability. So it helps with bushfire recovery. We can see how areas are regenerating after a massive bushfire, which we get quite a lot of. We can look at fire scar mapping, and we can get really good resolution on that as well, because we've got petabytes of data that we ingest, but we just weren't using it before. So I think, to me, that was really exciting. We're bringing together, we digitized some images, we had this satellite imagery, we have high performance computing, and we brought it all together to be able to create these new insights and be able to use it in a real world setting to manage environmental resources, which are really precious to everyone. And, you know, it has agricultural benefits in that farmers can use it to help manage their land. It has government regulation type applications so that we can make better policies on land use and say, like, oh, well, you know, this species is getting out of control. Maybe we need to try to do something to, you know, prevent the spread of that. Or to, on the other hand, there's a species that's dying off and we need to plant more of that particular species to regenerate the environment. So, I mean, it's really exciting when you see the tech transform into something that's tangible and it's making a real world difference, and on a very large scale as well. So that was probably my most exciting use case from that project. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. That is phenomenal. And I love that as you were progressing, you were unlocking new capabilities that hadn't been considered before. So it's kind of like you're standing on a higher platform as you're delivering work and being able to see more opportunities and going to the next one and the next one. So building upon that over time would have been so satisfying from a professional perspective to see not only the progress, but then the new opportunities to make a difference. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's the thing. As you said, it sort of evolved. We didn't initially set out to do all of, I guess, that huge impact, but we just took it step by step and said, well, let's just digitize these specimens first. And then that naturally led to, well, what else can we do with these? And now we share them worldwide. So anyone in the world can now look at the flora specimens that we have in our state. And there are some really unique, beautiful plants out there that people want to research. And so you can get access to that very easily. Click of a button. You don't need to go through customs and quarantine and a huge process we used to have to share or loan a specimen and try to get it back. And that often get damaged and all of that stuff. So that was our first goal. But as you said, Philippe, then we just realized that we unlocked more potential to do more with that data once we had it. And the more we shared it, the more people approached us in terms of how they could use it. So I think one of the lessons was, if you can make your data open, as in it's not sensitive, then it's so valuable to do that, because it allows others to work, build on what you've done and take it in a new direction that you might not have even thought of yourself.
I love it. I love it. That is amazing. That is amazing. No, like a huge congrats for everything that you achieved there. And then that led on to you also winning a really exciting award recently. So congratulations. So actually, I'll ask you, tell us about that, about the award that you recently won.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was a really amazing moment in my career, but it was around the science work that we did. So I just won the Data Leader of the Year for Women in Digital for 2022, which was amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then I also won the second award, which was like never happened before. It was for digital transformation for the same program. So 2 categories. It was really amazing. I was in shock the whole night, but just even being part of that process, though, Philippe, amazing projects that were put up for consideration. You just think, wow, there's a lot of really good stuff out there. And I think women being more involved in these projects has been really nice to see, that there's more female participation coming in. And I think that's what these awards are trying to recognize, is that we're getting what was traditionally a very male, analytical tech field. And there's more females being attracted into that industry now, which is great. And it's like our teams are about 40 to almost 50% female at various times. So I think that was really nice. It was a good mix in our team. And we really liked having that gender balance and the diversity, which I think helped our team become more high performing in certain areas, because everyone brings their own, I guess, complementary skills, and things like communicating can sometimes be, maybe it's more of a female trait that you do communicate a bit more. I'm not saying that for everyone, but just in general, I think it brought a lot of, it really benefited our team by having that mix of people. And the more I work with data suppliers and consultancies, the more I realize that there are a higher proportion of females out there. So I'm just really excited, and I hope that these awards really encourage more women to get involved in the field, because it's a great, exciting place to work.
It is, isn't it? And I completely agree that the having gender balance definitely complements the team and makes a team such much more impactful in terms of what can be done by having the different perspectives and people with different strengths and natural strengths that they can tap into. And something that you've done so well with your career. So congratulations on all the work around that digital transformation that you were saying. It was like 5 or 6 years, and the amount of work is phenomenal. The achievements speak for themselves, and then leading up to winning 2 awards on the same night as a new record that hadn't happened before. That's phenomenal. So congratulations, and
thank you.
And thank you so much for taking the time to come and share not only your journey, but your insights, your learnings, and your perspectives throughout your career. Thanks so much for sharing that with us, and for all the amazing work that you've been doing out there. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Philippe. And I've got to say that it's, although I was the lead on that program, it really came down to the amazing talent of the people that I worked with. And I just think that, we often do a lot of work behind the scenes that people don't recognize. So I think when I won that award, I really felt like it belonged to the whole team, because without the data scientists, the engineers, the architects, the experts in the field, they all came together, like we wouldn't have been successful. And I'm just really privileged that I got to lead that team. But it's really amazing when you have a high performing team and it all comes together. You can achieve some really amazing things. So I'm just so grateful for that. It's been amazing.
Too good. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.